Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories. Relentless bombardment in Gaza, where the death toll nears 22,000 people, as Israel's war cabinet considers a possible prisoner exchange. Our other headlines: Beijing calls for peace as the conflict between Russia and Ukraine escalates after 2 days of major aerial assaults by both sides. And the ties that bind us, 50 years of a diplomatic relationship, as Spain and China celebrated their half-century. Officials in Gaza say at least 150 Palestinians have now been killed in aerial and ground attacks over the last 24 hours. The Israeli military continues to target areas across the enclave, insisting it's hitting Hamas infrastructure. Almost 22,000 Gazans have now been killed since this conflict began in October, when Hamas militants launched attacks in Israel. Our correspondent Noor Harazin is in central Gaza.
Well, yes, it was one of the deadliest days on Gaza. I actually said the same thing 2 days ago. However, it looks like every day that passes, things here in Gaza gets harder on the people. More struggle is added to the struggle that the people are already going through today. And let's talk about some of the highlights. 15 people from the Hamouda family were killed in an Israeli strike next to the Islamic University in northern Gaza. 40 people from Silmi family were killed in a series of Israeli strikes on the Az-Zaytun neighborhood, also in northern Gaza. 24 people were killed in Qizan, Al-Najjar in Khan Yunis. 7 of them are children. This happened in also a series of Israeli strikes in Khan Yunis, while 24 people were killed in an Israeli strike inside the Al-Aqsa University in central Gaza. And talking about the latest attacks here in middle Gaza, I am inside the Al-Aqsa hospital, and just an hour ago, an Israeli strike hit the Sukaina bin Hussein UN school, where hundreds of people are sheltering.
Well, let's get the view from Israel now and talk to our correspondent Trent Murray, who's watching events for us in Tel Aviv. Trent, Israel's war cabinet meeting, what can we expect?
Well, we can probably expect a continued reiteration of the Israeli government's motive or war plan. We know Benjamin Netanyahu has been saying going into that war cabinet that Israel's war with Hamas could continue for many more months. He also said that he is resisting international pressure to scale back the operation until Israel achieves absolute victory, in his words, over Hamas. And those are words I'm sure that will concern many diplomats in this region who are calling for Israel to lay out a timeline or a framework of when it's going to move away from this high-intensity warfare that we're seeing to an operation that's more targeted. We've seen more airstrikes confirmed by the IDF today, particularly around southern Gaza. We've also seen rocket flurries coming over from Lebanon once again. The IDF saying it's responded with its own wave of airstrikes across southern Lebanon. So I'm not sure we'll get any major announcements out of that war cabinet meeting around a change of tact on the ground, but it comes, as you say, as the international community and many aid agencies are warning about the situation in Gaza and the escalating humanitarian crisis.
Trent, a word about continuing attacks on ships in the Red Sea. What's going on?
Well, we have seen these reports confirmed by the US Navy that there was a pretty serious incident overnight involving a ship, a Maersk Hangzhou, as it's known. It flies under the flag of Singapore. Now, the US Navy says it responded to distress calls from that vessel with 4 boats, small boats, launched from Yemen, operated by Houthi rebels, reportedly trying to board that ship in what seems to be a hijacking attempt. Now, responding to those distress signals, the Navy said it dispatched helicopters from the USS Eisenhower aircraft carrier. Those helicopters then reportedly came under fire from the Houthis aboard those vessels. Those helicopters then returned fire, sinking 3 of those small boats and the other 4th one fleeing the scene. Now, this comes as international shipping companies were just starting to return to the Red Sea, given what we have seen there in recent weeks. The arrival of the US and others onto the scene with their naval assets seemingly hasn't deterred the Houthis from continuing to launch these types of operations and attacks on commercial ships. Maersk, the owner of this particular ship, says the vessel wasn't damaged. It did reportedly receive a missile strike, but it's still seaworthy. But the company has said it now is once again, having already reversed its decision earlier, it once again now is suspending all of its traffic in the Red Sea for the next 48 hours.
Trent, thank you for that. Our correspondent Trent Murray in Tel Aviv. The death toll in the Russian city of Belgorod has risen to 24 people following a Ukrainian rocket attack on Saturday. The regional governor says 108 people were injured in addition to the 24 dead. Russia responded to the attacks on Belgorod by launching a fresh attack on Kharkiv, injuring 28 people. Well, as the conflict between Ukraine and Russia enters a 3rd year, China has called on both sides and the international community to work for peace.
We renew our appeal to the parties concerned to respond positively to the international community's call for peace, enhance engagement, expand common ground, and put an early end to the hostilities. We also renew our appeal to all stakeholders to step up diplomatic mediation with a greater sense of urgency and work together to create conditions for an early political settlement of the crisis.
Venezuela will continue the deployment of nearly 6,000 troops until a British military vessel sent to neighbouring Guyana leaves the area. Guyana, a former British colony, has been in a long-standing territorial dispute with Venezuela. The rising diplomatic tensions come after Venezuela made a fresh claim to the area known as Essequibo, which is rich in oil and minerals. "2023 marked a significant anniversary as China and Spain celebrated 50 years of diplomatic relations. A number of cultural and diplomatic events were held, with the highlight the meeting between President Xi Jinping and Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez. Our correspondent Ken Brown reports.
Lanterns, firecrackers, lions and dragons. 2023 rang in the year of the rabbit, a symbol of longevity, peace and prosperity. It was a fitting year then for a significant milestone between China and Spain. Half a century of official diplomatic relations. A perfect excuse for a packed calendar full of cultural events. The China National Traditional Orchestra wowed Madrid and Barcelona with opera and traditional music performances featuring instruments like the erhu, pipa and the guzheng. A culinary feast called China Taste delighted Spanish foodies with a number of restaurants offering Chinese delights to raise funds for the Red Cross. Strong bilateral ties were also promoted through the longest cargo train journey in the world that connects both countries. Perhaps the most famous guests were also the oldest. 2,000 years old, in fact. The Terracotta Army arrived in force in Alicante and attracted hundreds of thousands of visitors.
China and Spain may be thousands of miles apart and have different situations, but they are both rich in history and cultural heritage. Cultural and tourism exchanges and cooperation have become increasingly close and have played a role as a bridge and link to enhance mutual understanding and appreciation.
Shaolin Kung Fu, calligraphy and online exhibitions were well received, while sports lovers even got to race with a Spanish gold medalist from the Beijing 2008 Olympic Games. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez was the first European Union leader this year to visit President Xi Jinping in Beijing. They discussed closer bilateral cooperation on a number of key issues for both countries. The trip proved very fruitful for Spain, with Sanchez signing significant agricultural deals. 50,000 tons of Spanish almonds will be heading for China by 2025, with that amount set to almost double within the next decade.
La reciprocidad.
Reciprocity, balance, level playing field and transparency. I think those are the key elements that will allow us to continue expanding the relationship between the European Union and China.
No landmark celebrations will be complete without an appearance by Madrid Zoo's most famous double act, Yo-Yo and Jojo. The twins turned 2 this year and are in good health, symbolic of a relationship between the two nations that has prospered over the past 50 years and promises much for the next 50. Ken Brown, CGTN, Madrid.
The world has already started celebrating the start of 2024. Let's take you to Hong Kong. It's the first time since 2018 Hong Kong has staged the spectacular display. Lu Lin, who directed the fireworks at the 2008 Beijing Olympics, is behind this year's display. The show is called New Year, New Legend, inspired by the changing seasons throughout the year. And that is the world today. Thank you for watching. There's more news on CGTN Europe's channel on the Telegram app, or scan the QR code on the screen to get stories and updates sent direct to your phone. More news at the top of the hour. Coming up next, it's Razor. For now, from all of the news team in London, Happy New Year.